if you're in charge of WWE, let's say that the hours are reduced for Raw, so it's 2 for Raw, 2 for SmackDown. I mean, we can probably both agree that they're both too long still, but let's say Dutch is now the king of WWE.
Way too long.
Yeah. Let's say Dutch Mantell is now the king of WWE. You can do anything.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
the emperor, the overlord of WWE. And let's say you've got a 3-point plan to make the television more bearable for people who have to watch it every week. What would you do?
Well, first of all, we've already cut the times down, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I miss? Those little stories within the story, the little stories within the show. Remember, they used to go out and shoot outside the studio. And that, to me, was, they used to say, man, they would do like 3 or 4 or 5, like little vignettes of a minute and a half or 2 minutes leading up to what was going to happen at the end of the show. I remember one expressly is when Steve Austin went to find Brian Pillman.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes. Absolutely.
And you heard the gunshot go off. The country went nuts because they led into that brilliantly. And they're thinking, like, did somebody get shot? Is it possible that happened? And I even thought so myself, but because they did it so well, because they were both loose cannons. And they went way out in the woods. But when it happened, people actually believed that. Here's another thing they believe. You remember Vince's limo blowing up?
I do. That was just before Chris Benoit died, wasn't it? So they never followed through with it.
Well, the people thought that Vince was actually in that car because they saw him get in. And you know how they did that, right?
I don't know.
Well, they blew the car up the night before. Oh no, they did it in 2 nights. They filmed him getting in the car the night before, and then they brought that same car back the next night when it was live, and you'd already seen Vince get into it. As soon as Vince got into it, about 5 seconds later, you saw it blow up. They blew that up live. So when the people came out, they saw a blown up limo. And they actually thought that Vince was in it. It was brilliantly done. And their ratings shot through the roof at that end segment because the people were waiting for the rest of the story. I used to have an old radio guy called Paul Harvey. You ever read about him?
I've heard the name, yeah.
And he would tell a story brilliantly. And he would get to the point and he said, and that's the rest of the story. That was his trademark. But people would wait to see what happened in that final segment. And now you know, well, man, they've hooked me now. I got to watch this again next week. That was back in the Attitude Era. That's when they had the people. So if I was in WWE, I would tell my creative team, I want more things outside the studio instead of inside the studio. It takes time to do that. I understand that. But if you want to draw fans, you just got to do it. You have to do it, I think. Because when I was in Puerto Rico, I would do those outside shots and my ratings were through the roof. Because I would tell 2 stories sometimes in the same show, 2 separate stories, but I would go out and, well, what I would do, I only worked 3 days a week in Puerto Rico. So I had time to actually go out and direct and produce these shoots. And we put them on the show and they were great. The ratings, I did a rating one time down there, and I'm not bragging, but I was doing prime time ratings on a wrestling show that came on at 1:00 in the afternoon on Saturday and Sunday. Primetime ratings. So, and I did a rating one time. I don't even know how I did it, but I guess something it was a good show that day. I did an 18.1 rating. Now, of course, their ratings is the same as the States, but they didn't have all the cable then. They had and they had TBS and they had a little cable. But I was reaching the whole island with an 18.1 rating. And somebody said, "How did you do that?" I said, "Well, you just got to know what you're doing." I didn't know what I was doing. I was entertaining myself, and if I was entertained, and I would think, well, hell, everybody else should be entertained. I don't think I'm that different than the average Puerto Rican guy on the street, except I don't speak Spanish. That was another thing. How did you do this? You don't even speak Spanish. I said, yeah, but I had people who did speak Spanish. So I told them in English, they'd translate to Spanish, and we'd go.
With
another thing is you got to understand your audience too. And because I heard one time, you may have heard this, that the wrestling viewership base changes like every 3 years, 4 years. I mean, your base audience just moves, changes. Kids, they watch it 12 to 15 and then 15 up to 20. They've got other things to do. So your whole base, and they don't even count the base of 50 and over. Don't even count it. I mean, you got to go for your demo markets. And if your demos are high, that's what the advertisers look at. And I never understood that, but I guess it's because the younger people buy more stuff. And I can understand that. But the older people don't.
Well, apparently not. I mean, I don't know where they get that information from. I'm pretty sure older people buy stuff as well.
Well, I'm saying buying, the older people don't. They don't buy like the younger people do.
Maybe not impulse purchases as much, maybe.
Maybe.